Howdy everyone, it's me once again, the one and only Killer Rodan. So today, of course, I still want to talk about Christmas, the movies and whatnot. I'm just pretty much going to continue what I was talking about in the previous video where I was explaining that Everest and I had pretty much saw Star Wars The Force Awakens, the fourth installment of the sequel trilogy during the time of Christmas, which of course is December. So we went to see that movie together pretty much because of the fact that yes, somebody pretty much bought a ticket for us as Christmas presents, these advanced tickets. So okay, that was fine. Haven't done that kind of thing in a while, buying advanced tickets to see something. But yeah, I guess this was used as a good way to celebrate that season. Even though I'm not really a Christmas person myself, really, but here we are. I guess this could be used as a good way to just have fun, obviously. And I was pretty much praising the film, despite the fact there was quite a bit of controversy surrounding it. But that's kind of the thing, though. Like the controversy would stop me from having a good time. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Goes against popular opinion, but like that stopped me before. If anything, the controversy would make me want to watch this anymore. I would want it to watch this even more just because of controversy. I mean, yes, moving beyond past that, the movie itself isn't nowhere near half bad as people made it out to be. But yeah, I enjoyed it. This was definitely having the movie be like a Christmas treat was definitely a good present during the holiday, as far as I'm concerned, because it was definitely a good movie. I did think it was pretty much a fun ride, despite the exaggerated claims that people had against it, of course. But altogether, I thought it was a great experience. So, like I was saying in the previous video, and when it comes to the grand story, I like the fact that how Ray pretty much meets up with Han Solo, and Han Solo is kind of like a teacher, so to speak, when it comes to these type movies. But yes, I do realize that these type movies would have this sensei student kind of a thing going on, like borrowing some stuff from Japan, which is not that much of a stretch really, because the movies have done it before. The whole thing with the samurai and whatnot, that's definitely is continuing in the Star Wars Force Awakens. So, which is fine as far as I'm concerned, because every bit of fiction has some truth in it, at least a good kind of fiction anyway. And of course, obviously, it depends on the execution. Of course, it depends how it's delivered. Obviously, it just depends how it's done when you in the grand scheme of things. So you have to be careful how you execute it, and obviously it just depends on how it's done. Of course, I didn't mind it really. So I did think that there was some influence from the Japanese culture being placed into these movies, and this in some ways was continuing that, which I didn't mind really. And the whole samurai thing was definitely a thing because of the fact that the Star Wars films can be described as, I guess, this grand epic sagas, which is fine because the period pieces are really known for the samurai, and there's a lot of samurai movies out there. And yes, of course, these films can be described as that period dramas. In a lot of ways, that's what they are. That's what these movies are. Period dramas. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of influence here, and there's definitely quite a bit of drama in this movie, and that's a good thing. That's definitely a good thing there. Definitely quite a bit of drama and whatnot. So, pretty much borrowing some samurai history, I guess in some ways, which I'm fine with actually. I did think that this is definitely a good thing. Basically, for a certain time, yes, the samurai were pretty much members of the Japanese warrior class of people, and they pretty much rose to power for a good while, I guess you can say. There's like a whole history of that, obviously. And yes, of course, they held power for a good while and pretty much dominated the Japanese government, so to speak, for, again, a good amount of era. For a specific era, they did anyway. But there's like a whole thing you could go to actually go into that. Because that whole history in itself, when it comes to samurai in Japan, is pretty interesting in its own little way. And yes, I would say look it up if you want to, if you want to learn more about it. And it definitely ties into the whole thing with the idea of s- samurai and Jedi. How Jedi supposed to have this code of conduct, of course. And yes, the samurai and Jedi supposed to have a moral code, so to speak. That's fine. I don't mind. I guess. I mean, yes, it's very specifically a certain type of era of Japan that this got inspired by. Very specific kind of way, I guess. Not the more modern Japan. Just to be perfectly clear, it's not the more modern day Japan that America foreign. It's more like ancient Japan. Not just any period of ancient Asian Japan, but a very specific era of ancient Japan that this was drawing heavily inspiration from, I guess you could say. So, of course, it was obvious that with Ray being a Jedi and being trained to be a Jedi and whatnot, yeah, that goes into play here, of course, obviously. So, Video Japan, if I remember correctly, yeah, there's a lot of connections between that and the Star Wars expanding universe and whatnot. It's being really connected in some ways. So yeah, having a master and having a student, the whole shebang with that, that's definitely gonna be a thing there. That's definitely gonna be a thing there, obviously, folks. So yes, basically, long story short, yes, there are quite a bit of noticeable ways, ideas of the Japanese culture that has definitely influenced Star Wars in multiple ways, of course. And yes, obviously, George Lucas has been really transparent about what exactly inspired him to create this expanded universe and whatnot, and that's really cool, of course. And that's fine. I don't mind that really. So there we go. I guess you can say it. So I did think that this was definitely something I can say was definitely well made in the grand scheme of things when it comes to this movie. It's basically continuing what they were trying to do, obviously, what George Lucas had started. Because like, contrary to popular belief, Disney did not wreck on the expanded universe. Disney did not ruin what they already created, what George Lucas and his team created. Disney did not ruin that, obviously. But again, that's just going against what they would say. This is I know a lot of people are just trying to talk trash about this movie, Star Wars: The Force Awakens, just as a way to talk talk a bunch of garbage about the company. That's it. And yes, obviously, it's just something I mentioned before. So in some ways, I just feel like I'm kind of repeating myself in some ways, of course, because of the fact that it's nostalgia. A lot of people are just stuck with nostalgia. They just don't like the fact that things are changing. They don't like the fact that things are not the way they used to be. For better or for worse, that's what happens. Society changes in a lot of ways. It's not going to be the same like it was when you were like, what, 12, 13, or whatever, when a lot of people first originally saw this. So it's just ridiculous that people would have this notion that it's gonna be exactly the same way like it always has been. So you gotta be kidding me. It makes no sense. So yeah, and yes, I do believe that nostalgia is toxic. I'm sticking by that quite a few times. I mentioned that before, but like I said, I don't want to be saying too long on this, but just do feel like I mean, hell, a lot of people are starting to like the prequel trilogy a lot more because they grew up with the sequel trilogy. And that's the thing with people is that you can either, of course, grow up with the original trilogy or grow up with the sequel trilogy, if not both. So as a result, a lot of people favor those two trilogies more over than this, just because of that, which of course is nonsensical. Nostalgia fuels a lot of bad arguments when you think about just toxic agenda in their own in a lot of ways. Of course, when it comes to discussing TV shows, video games, movies, comic books, so on and so forth. A lot of people just felt like it was better back then and whatnot. I mean, yes, you can make there's an argument to made here is that that's just like nostalgia. In a lot of ways, you'd be right. Just it just seems nonsense. So, like a lot of people got their, I guess, feelings hung up on this because they feel like, oh, it was so much better back then. It was so much better and whatnot. Yes, nostalgia can be really toxic, of course. can be very toxic, of course. And just, I don't know, just, yeah, it hurts deeply that people can't go back to a specific time period because it was better back then, which I don't know how that makes any sense, but whatever. It's like the worst kind of pain people can go through, which just to some extent can be understandable, of course. Yeah. So if anything, it kind of reflects on the feelings of pain in the present, because the present, like right now, the way people are feeling like this moment feels extremely painful. Maybe because they're going through a struggle right now. They don't. People are not adjusted to it. This could be, of course, could be a number of different factors where that maybe you lived in a bubble for a good chunk of your childhood, if not your childhood, and maybe your parents, or maybe one of your parents, assuming is a single parent raised you, you kept in your bubble. They know they're trying to protect you from the harsh reality of the outside world. What I'm saying is that there were problems back then. There were people doing bad things during your childhood. Maybe it didn't affect you directly. It just affected someone else. Maybe your friends, maybe a neighbor, or maybe somebody you never met. Maybe there's somebody out there that you never met had a much worse childhood than you did. Or maybe it was a grown up that faced something horrible and you had no idea. I had no idea what had occurred. There's like different things come into play. So a lot of people seem to believe that like nothing bad happened back then. Nothing really terrible occurred. I don't know. It just seems weird if you ask me. I don't know. Maybe just me. Maybe just ranting on like I always do. I'm always seem to be complaining about something, and not for the same reasons. Obviously, of course, not for the same reasons. Of course, just stuff I just think that's just seem rather moronic in a lot of ways. That's not me trying to dismiss how people feel or anything. My point being, nostalgia, it's like more like in the past kind of a thing, really. And yes, people make these exaggerated claims that Disney ruined Star Wars, which, yes, I mentioned before in my previous video and a number of different videos. They didn't, they didn't ruin Star Wars. Star Wars was already ruined. I mean, okay, this was Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Like I said, Alfred and I watched this movie during Christmas, and I thought it was a good gift, good watch. But it's not the fact that the movie is bad or anything. But again, even if it was, that's kind of irrelevant to some extent because of the fact that Star Wars was already ruined. Star Wars was already ruined because of what George Lucas had done in the prequel trilogy. The prequel trilogy, as far as I'm concerned, is still some of the worst movies I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of bad movies. I've seen a lot of bad movies. Okay, the prequel trilogy. It may not be the number one worst. That's for sure. It's not the number one worst I've seen. Just on out there. I know that Star Wars Episode Two, Attack of the Clones, is often listed as the worst Star Wars movie. But personally speaking, I kind of felt like Star Wars Episode Three is the worst one because a lot of people felt that Episode Three, Revenge of the Sith, is the best prequel film out of all three of them. Which I don't understand really because Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, it's literally the same exact movie as the previous two. So I don't understand that. It's literally the same movie, if not worse. Whatever problems that the previous two movies had, the third movie is trying to explain them away, but it's trying to compound its own problems. So it's just problems on top of problems on top of problems on top of problems. Then it's like on top of all the problems. It's just compound. I know that George Lucas was trying to fix these problems from the previous two in the third one, but it just no, it just compounds against each other, even further among its own problems. But anyway, point being is that yeah, even at this franchise, what I'm saying, even at its worst, the franchise at its worst, I still seen worse. Just throwing it out there, I've still seen worse films than the worst Star Wars movie. I'm just throwing that out there. I've still seen far worse than the Star Wars than the worst Star Wars movies ever made. You know what I'm saying? These Star Wars: The Force Awakens, the following films are not the worst. Okay, just throwing it out there. If, as far as I'm concerned, I'm probably gonna get some slack over this, but the Star Wars sequel trilogy I mean, hell, I can just say Star Wars: The Force Awakens, the movie, the Star Wars movie I saw during Christmas. I realize that I'm going to get some heat for saying this, but I can say that Star Wars: The Force Awakens is a vast improvement over Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, Episode 2, Attack the Clones, and Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. This one film alone is much better than any of those three, because those are poorly done. And which I've mentioned before in various other videos. I mean, yes, I did review every Star Wars film so far, and I gave complaints for the prequel trilogy, of course, among other movies of the franchise. And yes, I did watch and review some of the TV shows as well. I did review some of the TV shows, by the way. Not all the TV shows, but some of them. I'm just throwing it out there. When it comes to TV shows, I'm just really reluctant on watching the shows because there's like so much of it. There's like so much Star Wars TV shows I have to go through. And I mean a lot. I mean, I'm aware, don't get me wrong, I'm fully aware that there's plenty of the Star Wars TV shows, and I haven't gone through with them because, in large part, it's because there's a lot of it. It feels like a chore, if you ask me. It feels like a damn chore, if you ask me. So it just makes me more reluctant on watching them. Really, I'll get to them if I feel like at some point, if I want to. Really, if I feel like it. But just I don't know. Just I mean I made complaints about plot holes in the TV shows before. It's not something I just did it like one time. That's it. I did it a few times before. I mentioned like story holes and whatnot in the franchise. But I can tell that Disney's attempting to make an improvement over some ways. They don't always succeed, obviously. But I'm just saying. Well, it's just people that want to just experience their past more. They just want to stick with the past, of course, obviously, and whatnot. But I mean, yes, you can remember whatever you want, of course. I'm not here to much put people down. I'm just want to criticize a lot of the fan base. That's basically what I'm doing. Criticize how the fan base can be really toxic in a lot of ways, which they are. Well, when you think about it, it can be really toxic. Unfortunately, I just don't get it. I just don't get a lot of fan base. How a lot of fan base can be acting a certain way, really. But anyway, Star Wars: The Force Awakens was definitely a good time in theaters during Christmas. I didn't mind it really. I personally didn't mind watching this during Christmas. I thought it was a pretty fun time as a whole and whatnot because of the fact I like the acting. The acting is actually pretty good, really. I did think the way that the actors and actors portray the characters is that is they did a good job. That's what I'm trying to say. They definitely did a good job for what they were trying to do, of course. So there you go. I'm definitely gonna say is that I know the hardest part about growing up is pretty much letting go of what were you were used to and just moving into something you're not. And yeah, that's pretty understandable. That's a complicated experience right there. That's very difficult to do. But that's the thing though. That's the way to change though. That's the way to succeed in life and whatnot. I mean, yes, of course, you're gonna work hard, and that's fine. And I would say that don't fall into trouble, but that's that's hard said and done, of course. It's easier said than done. Yeah, that's the way to say it. It's easier said than done. Don't fall into trouble. That's easier said than done. I can't say that. Oh, just be happy. I'm not trying to argue that either, folks. I know there's people out there who are suffering from depression for whatever reason. I can't just say, oh, stop overthinking it. Oh, just be happy. No, no. That's for a lot of people. It's not as easy as other people. Just because one person can make it through life easier than the other doesn't mean that it's gonna be easy for the next person. Is what I'm saying. So there you go. So I'm just saying. So I'm not here to speak over that matter really about how people can be depressed and whatnot because maybe they missed their childhood, they missed their maybe their let's say the middle school years, the high school years, up to the point it makes them depressed and whatnot. I mean, it could vary from person to person. I'm not here to shame anyone for feeling bad. Okay, I'm not. That's not what I'm trying to argue here. Just trying to bring that here, right? I know it's the whole seasonal depression and people going through middle age, and stuff like that. Just this kind of thing just really has a negative outlook on their outlook in life. I'm not here to pretty much pass judgment. All right, that's what I'm not doing here. I'm just criticizing the toxic stuff of the fan base. Okay, that's it. I'm trying to make myself perfectly clear. I'm just trying to talk about the toxic nature of the fan base. That's it. That's solely it. I have no agenda like some people might assume or anything like that. No, I'm just trying to criticize the toxic nature. That's simple. It's literally that simple. Just trying to critique how the fan base can be extremely toxic because that's what they are. Unfortunately, a lot of the fan base. Of course, it's not the entire fan base. There are some exceptions to this. Of course, it's not everybody's going to be acting this kind of way. Of course, obviously, I'm just saying. No, of course, you can't. I can't just say just be happy because that's easier said than done for a lot of people. Of course, of course, people want to find happiness in their own way, obviously, in their own method, of course. And it's just unfortunate that people can't let go of nostalgia and just become more successful in their lives. It is possible. Yes, it's about knowing what you really want and keep pursuing it, sure. And people will let go, will say let go and become a good person, of course, in some sort of way. But again, like I said, saying let it go is a lot more harder or easier to depend on the individual. So of course there's that. So you have to mature progress in mind. While yes, you can still do that while embracing great things from your childhood. And that's another thing though. Things like video game. Maybe there's a certain game you liked as a kid, or maybe when you're in high school, or maybe there's a certain type of excitement that you like and music. I'm not saying to not enjoy stuff from your childhood. Okay, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you can't enjoy stuff, or maybe some experiences with friends or teachers that you had from your middle school or high school. I'm not saying you can't embrace that. All right, I'm not saying that, but don't be so blinded by nostalgia that you can't let go. You can't let that go and not experience brand new things. You don't have to ignore the great things that have occurred since then. You can't just ignore the advanced improvements like in science and medication, technology and whatnot. I mean, yes, I would even say there's a certain charm. I would admit there is a certain charm towards like something like the VHS tape and whatnot, and the VHS tape player. There's a certain like simplicity, enjoyment when it comes to that. Sure, I look funny across that. You can do that, but don't let that cloud your judgment. Is what I'm saying. Oh yeah, and when it comes to video games, of course, if you want to preserve video games, oh, you can do that. Sure, I'm not saying not to. Okay, if you want to preserve like a specific game that you liked way long ago, maybe there's a specific Nintendo game, or maybe in this case a Star Wars game. Maybe there's a Star Wars game that they're not printing anymore, they're not making anymore, but you really enjoyed it. You want to keep it around in some kind of shape or form. And by all means, go for it. That's fine. I'm not saying not to. I'm not saying not to do that. Okay, just saying that. I'm not saying you can't enjoy things from long ago. I'm not saying you can't. Just to be perfect here. Again, it's just the fan base getting really toxic about everything. I just want to claim that Disney ruined their childhood. That's a flat out lie. That's a complete and utter lie. Because your childhood doesn't exist anymore. What did Disney do the Thanos snap your child out of existence? Is that what happened? And you have like amnesia about it? Like your childhood is spontaneously not existent anymore? It still happened. Your childhood still happened. It's not going to go anywhere unless you somehow forget about it. Like you have an amnesia, I guess. But it's still there. That's such a ridiculous claim that it's just nonsensical. It's very nonsensical. I don't know. Just again, I'm just trying to critique the toxic fan base. Okay, Alphas and I we enjoyed Star Wars: The Force Awakens during Christmas. I mean, enjoyed it. It's nowhere near that bad of a movie. Look at all. Which yes, especially goes into the whole Christmas thing because I know a lot of people have nostalgic Christmas, I guess, memories from long ago when they were younger, of course. And yes, this in some ways can make even the Christmas time even more depressing than compared to some people because maybe you had a family back then. Maybe your family had a bad falling out and you guys are not no longer together. I mean, it doesn't have to be just that. It could be maybe your neighbors that you really liked having over during a certain period of time, or maybe it's your friends that you have over. You can be like a number of different things. Just basically, just people you would have over during Christmas time, and the fact that it's no longer a thing. It could be like a variety of different reasons. Maybe somebody passed away, maybe you have a bad falling out with your friends, neighbors, or what have you. Just for whatever reason, all of you are not together anymore. For whatever reason, those are a number of factors could came into place into this kind of a thing. Maybe it's just financial. It could be just that. Maybe financially, you can't do this anymore. Be together. I mean, maybe you just live too far away. It could be nothing. You maybe live too far away from your relatives, or maybe you live too far away from those nice neighbors of yours, or maybe you just live too far away from those best friends. I mean, there's always you can always do Zoom, FaceTime, whatever you want to call it. I guess you could do that, I suppose. But I mean, yes, it's not exactly quite the same as being there in person, obviously. But I just make an effort, maybe. I don't know. So that just makes it a bit more sad when you think about it with the people you really like being around, but you can't do it anymore. And maybe you live in a different country. Or maybe they live in a different country. Or maybe a different state. Like I said, those are like a number of different things that could come into play here. Maybe I don't know. Maybe with the person you'll be hanging around with quite a bit. Maybe you just watch a bunch of Christmas movies like you used to, but you can't anymore for whatever reason. Maybe it's your boyfriend or girlfriend, or maybe your husband or wife. Maybe the both of you are separated, but I want to remain friends anyway. But I mean, that's gonna kind of make it awkward, sure, but still trying to be mature about it, I suppose. But it kind of goes into what I'm saying earlier because I mean, it's easier said than done. It's basically what I'm getting. I'm trying to go wrap around that again. It's easier said than done, of course. Obviously, you just have to keep in mind that kind of thing. People change. Maybe that's another thing. Maybe they changed. Maybe the person you're close with maybe changed. Maybe that individual. It could be maybe your uncle or maybe a niece or nephew, or maybe the one good friend you had back in high school or middle school. Maybe this setting or that one nice neighbor. Or maybe this said individual just turns out to be an asshole after all these years. Maybe like there's a bunch of things that could just make the whole thing of Christmas more depressing. It could be like a number of different factors that come into play. Unfortunately, but that's life, though. That's unfortunate. That's part of life. It happens. I mean, I know you can't just exactly just brush it off, obviously, because you spend so much time with said individual doing a specific type of holiday. Your nostalgic feelings would be kind of like how people would have nostalgic feelings. They would attach it to either the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy. The holidays would be no different. They have attached these holidays to a specific holiday. This holiday feelings, I guess, these memories from way back when. Of course, I'm not saying, oh, get over it, oh, man up. I'm not trying to say that, okay? I know, like I was saying, it can be difficult for a lot of people. And for a lot of people, one of the hardest parts for people is maybe the pain of letting go of how carefree that your childhood was, but then compare this to like it feels like losing a close friend. You not like you careless childhood. It feels like losing a close friend who's obviously your funniest friend, of course. But yeah, it just just a bunch of crazy stuff that does happen, obviously, unfortunately. But I do want to get back to the whole idea that how the Star Wars films were heavily influenced by the Japanese culture. I did not forget about that, by the way. I just want to bring this up quite a bit to talk about some things. I mean, there's going to be more than one part of this. There's going to be more than two parts of this anyway. So it's not that I have a lack of time, but point being, I don't want to get lazy about it. I'm trying to make these videos be as informative as possible, each individual one, of course. And I mean, yes, I could space out certain topics, but I don't just want each individual video to be have its thing, I guess you can say. And this one, in talking about nostalgia. I mean, I want all this to be connected somehow. I guess. Sure, these videos when it comes to topics. This gameplay that Everest and I have been doing, it dragged out. It was supposed to have been a lot shorter. It dragged out, unfortunately. And a quick reminder: he's on the top and I'm on the bottom. If in case anybody forgets. And yes, I will post a link down below in the description box if anyone wants to see some of his gameplay. He's gonna be way more frequent with gameplays and compared to me. Just throwing it out there, so you know. And I still want to talk about a bunch of Christmas movies, of course, on this channel. Just throwing it out there. But anyway, just get on with it, I suppose. But yeah, like we say, I just have to thank everybody ahead of time right now that for I know this is a long video. It feels like I'm just rambling on and on. And how like kind of like how to say that how to put this without coming off rude. How do a lot of men or women? It's like they're not growing up in this way. It kind of reminds me of the Peter Pan. Yeah, like Disney's Peter Pan. He would never grow up, and him and his friends would go to maybe to a like Neverland, and they just don't want to grow up. That's kind of I feel a lot of people these days. A lot of people these days they just don't want to grow up, really, so to speak. I mean, they obviously are growing, of course, because your physical body would change, obviously, but it just comes off like in some way they're not growing up. They're not letting go of the past. Because the past is what they all think about. That really reminds me of the Star Wars fan base, of course. It's the past, the past, the past, the past, the past, the past. Like Christ, I get it. You had a good time back then, but I guess it was some. I mean, this of course is not coming speaking for everybody, but the next part I'm going to say is that maybe one individual's problem with growing up mentally is wanting to experience all the things that the person should have experienced when they were starting to grow up physically. Maybe they should have done certain things back then, like how maybe someone is 25 and they're just now getting a job, and they're just now getting a car, and they're just now going to college. Maybe all these kinds of stuff. Maybe you should have done that maybe when you were like 18, 19, maybe, or even 16. You want to go that far back? Maybe even 16. Maybe there's certain specific things like that, or what I just mentioned, you could experience at 16. So, but there was just some people may want to refuse to do that because they want to linger around their childhood as often as they can. But once they realize that you can't, you should have done this, you should have done that, could have done this, could have done that, should have done this, should have. It's just too late. It's like it's way too late now. Now they're starting a lot later than it should have sooner. Now it's going to be more difficult. It's not as impossible to do certain things. It's just going to be more impossible, more harder. And maybe you should have got your own place. Maybe you were living with your parents for too long, or maybe with one of your relatives. I mean, it doesn't exactly have to be your parents. It could be your sister, or whoever your guardian is. Maybe you live with this individual for far too long, or maybe it could be your friends. Maybe you had them you're their roommate for a good while, and you maybe should have been left and had your own place a hell of a long time ago, compared to a lot sooner than later. Maybe you should have done it sooner and not later. So now that you haven't done that, it's gonna be a lot more difficult. I mean, same thing with jobs. Maybe you should have got a job before before when you were in your 30 or maybe 29 or 31, something like that. So it's people like just like the it goes into what I was saying a moment ago is that the whole carefree kind of thing, and of course there'll be certain things maybe some people should have done a lot sooner, sure, but I'm just saying though. So when it comes to the holidays, this kind of stuff may come into your mind like during Christmas. I know the year has been gone. Like you may have felt that you haven't done anything really, but I mean I guess you gotta keep going forward and whatnot. I mean, that, of course, that's like I said, like I keep saying over and over again, that it's a lot easier said than done, obviously. But yeah, I just thought I'd throw that in there, of course, when it comes to this kind of stuff, because it's just the fan base being really toxic. Trying to say that Star Wars The Force Awakens is one of the worst movies in existence, which I, of course, have to disagree with. But like we're saying, is the whole idea with Japan have some kind of influence in Star Wars. I like that. And Star Wars The Force Awakens kind of just continues that with the droid. You kind of like how R2D2 and C3PO had some inspiration from maybe other sci-fi films long ago, and this just continues from there. So that's something, of course, obviously, and that's the thing, though. Of course, there's gonna be a lot of iconic scenes. No, that's in Star Wars in the original trilogy, of course. It was heavily inspired by how the samurai and all that, like I was saying before, the swords, and like in this case, lifesavers, I guess. Lifesavers, however you want to pronounce it, you know what? You know those laser swords that they have. It's really reflective on how maybe depending on your more code, like having a samurai and whatnot. And so it's just this kind of thing that, of course, as Jedi, we have their own mortal enemy, which is a Sith, of course, which is a very Japanese thing too, as well, because again, the whole morality thing must fight against your opponent, these individuals who are trying to disrupt the peace, and you're supposed to be keeping the peace, of course. I like that, and of course, with the Force Awakens, it would just continue from there. Obviously, I did think that was definitely a good thing. So I don't mind that really. I really didn't mind that whatsoever, of course. But yeah, I mean, I know there's the one thing, the one film called The Hidden Fortress. The Hidden Fortress. I'll say look it up if you haven't known about this, but The Hidden Fortress was definitely had a massive influence on on Star Wars. It's a Japanese film, of course. So if anybody's listening, is that trying to look up like the how the Hidden Fortress had heavily influenced on Star Wars. It's there. It's definitely there. It's influenced Star Wars in more ways than one. So I would definitely, even down to the storytelling, the way it's choreographed, stuff like this. It's in there. It's definitely in there. And even George Lucas brought that up when it comes to that one film I just mentioned. Even George Lucas mentioned it himself, how that helped him to shape the story, of course, and whatnot. So yeah, just before I end this video, is that thanks for watching, folks. Just thanking anybody ahead of time. There will be more parts after this, just so you know. But anyway, the Hidden Fortress. Definitely look it up if you want to see some more ideas and facts or whatever. How that Japanese film heavily influenced Star Wars in a lot of ways, actually, in so many different ways. It definitely did, and whatnot. I mean, it's not the only time. Of course, George Lucas also drew inspiration from the low budget B sci-fi movies that I've reviewed before on this channel. There's like a lot of inspiration from that too, especially the sci-fi vintage movies that I reviewed on this channel. He also took inspiration from that as well. Just throwing it out there. So there you go. But yeah, it's a period drama. I guess you can say that's what I got from Star Wars. It's a period drama in a lot of ways when you think about it. In the grand scheme of things, at least that's how I took it. And the Force Awakens is definitely going along with that, which I thought was nice. That's a nice touch. Like George Lucas says, it may not be exactly 100%, but so that it can rhyme. So that it can rhyme, so to speak. George Lucas said that himself. So okay, that's how you want it. I find kind of weird that a lot of fan base will recognize that, but when Disney does it, they suddenly have a problem with it. I don't get it. It seems like they're picking favorites here. But anyway, yes, I'm going to. I know I'm pretty much beating over the head that Star Wars was not ruined by Disney because it was already ruined by George Lucas himself. He already ruined himself. It was Disney didn't do it. But anyway, I'm not trying to come off too complacent here, even though I kind of am really when you think about it. But yeah, this was definitely a good Christmas present that I was in and I saw. I mean, we didn't actually see it on Christmas, but still, it was definitely Christmas adjacent. I guess it was definitely in the month of the Christmas season, so there's that. I guess I count for something, right? And I guess in some ways this does give me an excuse to talk about some Disney related during my Christmas-a-thon, I guess. So that's something as well, of course. So yeah, I'm gonna have to make these videos incredibly long, really, because just trying to do as much as I could in one video, obviously. But yeah, I just think I just use this as a way to talk about these kinds of stuff, of course, because it can be a good thing to talk about these type of movies. Like I said, well, I was never the hugest fan really of this, but I have to talk about something for this because it's Star Wars. I have to talk about Star Wars. Come on. When it comes to the military force, and when it comes to sort of historic periods and whatnot, and of course how the Japanese did it. Of course, how the Japanese did it and whatnot. I know the original Star Wars trilogy did take some awesome some heavy inspiration from World War II. It's basically World War II in outer space in some sense. And like the whole yes, of course, it's pretty obvious that when it comes to World War II, obviously one of the first of many things that dumps come to mind is of course Nazis. Hitler and all that. I mean, of course, there's Joseph Stalin, Mao, and all that. Other dictators you can think of, like how the one individual from Cuba or how North Korea is and stuff like that. Unfortunately, yeah, this kind of communist, fascist, socialist kind of thing still exists throughout its history for quite a long time, even to this very day, unfortunately. But not to get too much derail this conversation too much. Really, is that yeah, Hitler. But pretty much, yeah, same stuff. So Force Awakens had some Nazi stuff going on as well for the bad guys. They were meant to be this kind of thing that you're supposed to hate them. You're not supposed to like them at all. But anyway, I'm referring to the fact that I understood that a lot of people. Okay, I mentioned this before as well, so excuse me if I come off a bit repetitive here. Is that a lot of Star Wars fans will complain that Disney made it political. Oh, it ruined because it's political now. Like it's like, what are you talking about, mate? Star Wars was always political. It was very political from the very beginning. It was political from the very get go. So think that it's gone political and all of a sudden it's nonsensical. It was not suddenly political. It was. It's just that maybe if somebody watches when they're way too young to understand this, a lot of the political stuff, a lot of political implications, it flew over their head. It flew over there. Like, of course, not an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old is not going to understand that. I mean, let's look at a really smart 12-year-old, I guess. I don't know. Because there's some kids out there who have a thing or two, who have some sense in their head. So there are plenty of kids out there who have that kind of thing. Even though I do think that these movies, all these movies, might be too mature for kids. If you ask me, it's not really a kids movie, really, but kids flocked over to watch them anyway, I guess. But anyway, but that's gonna be like a whole different story there because yeah, there's lots of violence in Star Wars, lots of political stuff in Star Wars. They're not gonna stand really. But that aside, it just comes out like a lot of the fans are refusing to accept that this was always political from the get go, or just they're just going to flat out trying to ignore it altogether for whatever stupid reason. It was always there. And some Disney fans may complain about these movies too for whatever reason. But I'm just going to be talking about the Star Wars fans really because even with them, even if they're willing to accept that it was always political and from the get go, they would also complain about the fact that politics should not be the character's personality. Like no kidding. I mean, obviously that's like the most obvious thing. If we want to put politics in any movie, regardless of genre, yes, politics should not be the only aspect of the character's personality. Obviously, of course, there should be more to the character than that. Of course. Anyway, that'll be it, folks. So again, I appreciate anybody for watching for sticking on for this long. So I expect more videos like this as soon as I can because I would do more of these, of course. And yeah, there's going to be another part, a third part of this as soon as I'm able to, folks. Okay, just throwing it out there. But yeah, this was definitely a pretty good Christmas present that were given to Elphys and I. We didn't even have to see it. I liked it. So, alright, that'll be it for now, I guess. So, stay tuned for part 3, I suppose. So, as always, thanks for watching and take care. See ya. Oh, yeah.